Hong Kong seeks to attract qualified mainland talent in order to keep Hong Kong competitive in a globalised market and to meet local manpower needs. The Admission of Mainland Talents programme sets up an immigration mechanism for Chinese residents of the mainland, separate from but aligned to the employment visa process which applies to other foreign nationals.
So the principal objective of the scheme is to enhance Hong Kong's status as an ageing world city. And the way that the programme is set up to do this is that we seek to attract qualified mainland talents and professionals who possess skills, knowledge and experience not readily available locally. This is the essential approvability test, and it's also augmented by the second limb, which shows that the talents must contribute with a view to facilitating Hong Kong's economic development, the arts, culture, sports, and very interestingly, given that we are talking about Hong Kong here, the culinary profession. And given that the approvability test under the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals programme is identical to the approvability test under the General Employment programme, it's hardly surprising then that the two initiatives are deemed to be very similar in how they are applied. So the approvability test, as we can see, is special skills, knowledge and experience of value to and not readily available in Hong Kong, but this is also augmented by some essential general eligibility criteria, such as there must be no security objection and no known record of serious crime, that the applicant should be very well educated, typically having a first degree in a relevant discipline, but as in all things in Hong Kong, there's a certain amount of flexibility, and if there isn't a first degree in a relevant discipline, associated expertise and experience to the job offer in hand will suffice in its stead. There has to be a genuine job vacancy, and that genuine job vacancy must be for a position that a local person cannot reasonably be expected to perform. The offer of employment that's bringing the talent to the mainland talent to Hong Kong has got to be relevant, and it has to be relevant to the particular circumstances of the applicant. The party which will be bringing the talent to Hong Kong has to be a validly registered local business entity, so the sponsor must be a local entity, it cannot be a mainland entity. And very importantly, the overall employment package that is being put together for the mainland talent and professional should be broadly commensurate with prevailing market rates. When the programme was initially initiated in 2003, it was anticipated that it would be merely Hong Kong entities that were in search of mainland talent and professionals to bring them to Hong Kong who would be the primary types of sponsors for these applications. However, through the implementation and experience of the programme over the last few years, we've arrived at a point where mainland business owners are actually able to take advantage of the programme as well. And this is where there is a situation of an establishment of a new Hong Kong operation and the mainland owner seeking to relocate to the HKSAR. So how can you use the Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals programme to be able to achieve this outcome? Well, the mainland owner would come to Hong Kong as a business visitor. He'd then establish the new company. He would leave Hong Kong, and then he would apply for an Admission of Mainland Talents and Professionals visa. Notably, the approvability criteria are exactly the same. He still has to satisfy the general policy in relation to this, but there is a mechanism available for mainland owners to be able to do that. So, in the process of applying to transfer himself to Hong Kong, the Immigration Department will consider the application, apply the approvability test. The owner's got to be skills eligible in relation to the special skills, knowledge and experience of value to and not readily available in Hong Kong, and the mere fact that he's the owner is not justification in of itself for the granting of the visa. And if the Immigration Department believe that everything stacks up and that policy can be satisfied in relation to an approval, then they will grant the visa accordingly. Another area of flexibility based on experience since the programme was introduced is the whole issue of mainland business executives. This is where a mainland business executive who doesn't own the company, but seeks to set up a new operation for his employers in Hong Kong. So what's the mechanism to allow him or her to be able to do this? Well, firstly, they enter as a business visitor, and the business visitor brings the mainland executive to the HKSAR. Whilst the business executive is in Hong Kong as a visitor, he's allowed to engage in preparatory work such as incorporating the company and laying the ground for what's about to happen. After he's established the company and laid the ground, then he returns to the mainland and he begins to progress to the next stage, which is to, whilst he's back in the mainland, apply for a short-term admission of mainland talents and professional approval. This will then allow a return to Hong Kong to set up the office, start business, recruit staff and fully implement the business plan. Once the business plan has been implemented, he can apply whilst he's in Hong Kong to seek to extend the admission of mainland talents and professional visa. And at this point, because the rationale for the granting of the approval has changed from a start-up situation into a full business situation, then the Immigration Department will apply the full approvability test in relation to that particular applicant. And as long as he's able to satisfy the full eligibility criteria, there's a very strong possibility, as long as the business plan has been implemented accordingly, that the Immigration Department will allow him to remain in Hong Kong on a full admission mainland talents and professional visa approval. Down the years, we've seen a situation where employees that are working for a mainland business entity are required to work in Hong Kong operations, and therefore there is a discrete category of person who qualifies under the admission of mainland talents and professionals program, and they're denoted as mainland intercompany transferees. And there are certain classes of companies that qualify under the mainland intercompany transferee consideration criteria. First is Hong Kong enterprises that have got factories or offices in the mainland. The second are mainland enterprises that have branch offices in Hong Kong. And the third class are multinational enterprises with branch offices in Hong Kong and the mainland. And people that are going to qualify under the mainland intercompany transferee criteria need to be managerial or professional staff. So at the minimum, there is expected that supervisory duties will be undertaken whilst they're working in Hong Kong under the program, and the skill set must be high, so these are not low-level employees. There's an expectation that there will be a minimum of 12-month prior employment with a related entity on the mainland, and this is a necessary precondition for consideration under the slightly less onerous mainland intercompany transferee approvability criteria. The remuneration package must be competitive, so there's no bringing of cheap employees to Hong Kong, and the compensation has to be broadly commensurate with what gets paid in Hong Kong generally. And in all the circumstances, the number of mainland intercompany transferees that are deployed in Hong Kong under the programme needs to be reasonable when aligned with the total employment and the nature of the business operations. So a few loose ends that apply to the admission of mainland talents and professionals programme are that these visas are only available on an entry visa basis. It is impossible to come to Hong Kong as a visitor and change your status under the admission of mainland talents and professionals programme. If you have been approved under the programme and you wish to change employers, it is possible. However, you still have to go through the whole process of seeking the consent of the Immigration Department to do this, and in many ways that's like making a completely new application from the very outset again. If you have an approval under this programme, you're able to bring your dependents to Hong Kong, and they will be able to secure dependent visas, and adults will be able to work without condition. And that the way that these visas are extended over time applies with the typical way that Hong Kong visas are extended, which is subjected subject to continuing satisfaction of eligibility, and are then granted to a normal 2 to 3 year pattern, and of course at the end of 7 years you're in a position to secure a long stay or permanent residence status in the HKSAI. The next step is for you to review the visa information document. This document details each of the essential elements of a successfully argued Hong Kong visa case and contains in-context links to all of the resources needed to prepare your application. These include application templates, the online application forms, screencasts on how to complete the forms, a checklist of all the documents you'll need to prepare as part of the submission bundle, a crib sheet on how to submit your application, and audio discussions of some of the finer points of official policy and procedure, and specific case examples from the past which will serve to help you by way of illustration. Let's go to the visa information document now.